Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Isaiah from Player Development. Today, I have a different kind of interview guest with me today. A lot of the social commentary and discussions we've had on this channel are from people on the more left side of the aisle. And today, we've got somebody who identifies as anti woke, Richard from the YouTube channel Recharge Freedom. And I am excited, maybe a little apprehensive about what he's got to share today, but I know he's got great opinions and he's not afraid to share them. So, welcome, Richard.
Definitely not afraid to share them. Thank you so much for having me, Isaiah. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, thanks so much.
Yeah.
So, let's start with kind of your background. So, there's a stereotype of the anti woke person that's kind of like a backwards person from a small town, maybe Midwest, right? Never left the town that they grew up in. And you are the complete opposite of that, man. You've been all over the world, you've interacted with different cultures. So, talk a little bit about your journey of how that came to be, how you came to defy the stereotype.
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I moved to Los Angeles after college at UC Santa Barbara. And I didn't really travel all that much during that time. I saved some money because I just worked and I worked and I worked in my 20s. That's all I did, and all I did was save money. And I just started to travel. And since then, I've been to 60 countries. I've
Hmm.
lived in 7 of them. I've lived in the United States, Canada, Bermuda, Mexico, Costa Rica, Thailand. So that's 7 countries that I've lived in, and I would not change it for a second. But in terms of the idea that anti-woke people or conservative people are from small town and that they're backwards, and if only that we could have a broader vision of the world, they like the woke people in the universities, I would say that it's almost the exact opposite. I believe that wokeism can only exist inside of a bubble where where nobody pays the consequence for their horrific ideas. I mean, when they say defund the police over and over again, and then Minnesota decides we're just going to shut things down a little bit, and you see the crime rate skyrocket, those university professors and those leftist white liberals can just retreat back behind the guarded gates of their community and be perfectly safe and not deal with the negative ramifications. Wokeism exists in a bubble, and those who you denigrate as conservative, they have to make things work. We're talking about your car mechanic that works on your car. That is something physical. And if he messes up, there's an immediate negative ramification that he has to deal with. He does not, and not only that, when I'm traveling and I'm in the Moroccan desert, and I've gone to some crazy places, I've been in the deserts of Syria right before everything blew up. I was the only white person there and I was the only person there without a freaking gun. And you survive that. You see how people live, and you realize, when I'm in the Moroccan desert and my SUV, we're 50 miles away from civilization, and my SUV blows a tire, you have to get out, jack up the car in the sand, which is not always very hard, and you have to figure out a way to jack up the car, pull off the tire, put on the spare, and get on your way, because the alternative is death. It's a
Mhm.
binary option here. So you actually have to make things work. And when you have to, you just don't have time for ideas that are absolutely stupid, that aren't going to work, like defund the police.
Gotcha. So, I know you've already kind of started the ranting here, but if anything, what positive do woke people bring to society?
I think that in the past, wokeism meant if you were woke, that you wanted to bring the world's attention to the plight of people that were disadvantaged. And who wouldn't appreciate that? Who doesn't like
Sure.
that? I want that. When I see people that are living a life that is very, very difficult, I want to give them money. I want to give them counseling or help or know-how, because that's what advances humanity, is sharing that. When I've been in the mountains of Vietnam, with the Black Hmong people. And when you're there, you see how little they have, how simply they live, a few dollars or some technical know how. But wokeism in its original form was a force for good. So let's give it credit for that. Unfortunately, today it's basically slowly degenerated into a bunch of peacocks preening for social justice points, to demonstrate who has the brighter colored feathers of social justice. And that's essentially what it's become. And now they're looking under every rock, in every nook and cranny for something wrong with the world, and then
Hmm.
trying to hit people over the head to make themselves feel better is the way that I see it.
So you see it as being a lot more self-serving of a movement now rather than focusing on the plight of others.
Absolutely. It's completely egocentric. You see all the woke people that they feel better because they're out with Black Lives Matter, because they have the black square. They don't care what happens to the black community. Nobody, as I said earlier, is there to clean up the mess when the black community has massive amounts of murders and spiking crime. They don't care. They feel good about themselves because they wave their BLM banner and they wear their BLM shirt. Meanwhile, Black Lives Matter, the movement, has stolen all the money that was given to them, hasn't given out to the local chapters, and is only concentrating on events, murders, or deaths of black people that will earn them money, not the local schoolgirl who was gunned down by the gangster in the drive-by.
So let me transition a little bit. So we were a bit big picture here. Let me go down to the realm of sports, which is where I tend to reside on my channel. A
Love me
lot
some
of this,
basketball.
yeah, a lot of this came about, maybe not came about, but a lot of rhetoric was spun around Colin Kaepernick and his initial protest kneeling during the national anthem. What are your thoughts about Colin Kaepernick and the effect that he's had on all of these social movements?
Number one, I will say that Colin Kaepernick, unless he's in violation of his contract with the NFL, absolutely has the right to kneel. That is protected by the First Amendment of the United States. And if you guys have been other places, if you go to Russia and you have any type of upward mobility and you speak bad about Putin, watch out.
Yeah.
Watch out. And I've seen it and I've experienced it firsthand where somebody was unwilling to discuss Vladimir, who was doing well in his own business. As I said earlier, I've been in Syria, and if you taught, the story was, and I wasn't there, but this is the story that I was told, that
Mm-hmm.
somebody said something positive that the new leader of Syria, Bashar, the junior Bashar Assad, has done a good job opening up the country, and everybody in the establishment moved away from him, and he was
Huh.
mystified why. The reason was because it was implied that the senior Assad did not do a
Oh.
good job with the country. And so, just by virtue of the fact that that was potentially implied in some people's minds, they wanted nothing to do with it because the Mukhabarat, which is the secret police of Syria, and I have been told about them by people that have been taken away and been beaten and tortured. And you should see the chills up their spine when they even try to mention the word. And then the answer is often, Richard, there are things that we do not discuss. And in Thailand,
Hmm.
if you speak badly about the king, you get 20 years in prison. When I was in Thailand, I lived there for 3.5 years. There was somebody that went to jail for leaving a bad review about the hotel. So all the people that want to dismantle the First Amendment, that say that at the same time that speech is violence and that silence is violence, and you want to confuse everybody and say that we can only dictate what you say, or California now making a law, AB 2098, I believe it is, where doctors are not allowed to speak in contrast or anything that could be perceived as going against the bureaucracy and what they say about COVID, that somebody can haul them in front of a medical commission for. They're just going to get all the doctors away from California. They're just going to move out. But you can't do this. And I forget what the original question was, and I'm sorry for the little rant here, but you can't do this for the long term and expect a civil society, and that's what makes America great, is the First Amendment. So forgive me, I forget what you
No,
originally
you're fine.
asked.
You were saying that like Colin Kaepernick is well within his
Colin
rights.
Kaepernick, oh my God, he is absolutely, thank you for bringing me back to Colin. He
Yeah.
is absolutely within his rights, and I support his right to speak. I don't support anything he has to say. In my opinion, he's a grifter because, just for the record, the reason that he started to kneel was for a justified shooting of somebody who was in San Francisco, I believe, who was going around with a knife trying to stab people. And what are you going to do? So you're going to kneel for that? You're going to say that the police are wrong about that? So yes, Colin Kaepernick absolutely has the right to speak his mind. I support that. But don't tell me that he's not a grifter. Don't tell me that somebody that sits in a Netflix documentary and tries to present the NFL draft as modern day slavery, where you're getting paid millions of dollars, and then goes back and announces that he wants to continue to try out for the NFL, is not a grifter. There's just no way around it.
And, a lot of your comments, as you're talking about Colin Kaepernick, other pro athletes who are protesting some of these things, is really reminiscent of Enes Kanter, who I believe changed his surname to Enes Freedom now.
Love that guy.
Yeah. So that reminds me of, I saw him do a Fox News interview after he got his American citizenship, and he was asked whether he thinks he's more grateful for his American citizenship than his American born teammates, fellow players. What are your thoughts?
There's no doubt about it. If you don't appreciate oxygen until you're underwater. When you go to some of these places that I've discussed, and I've been to others, you don't appreciate what you have. You stay quiet because they will come for you in those places. You've never known freedom. And you come to the United States and you're like, oh my God, I'm breathing. There is oxygen. I'm no longer in the water. People in the United States have no recognition because they've never spent that time underwater. And that's why I think that it's very important for people to travel to such places so that they're more appreciative of the freedom that Colin Kaepernick has to be able to call Donald Trump whatever horrible names I'm sure he has. You do not do that in Russia. You do not do that in Syria. You don't do that in virtually any other country on the planet. So yeah, Enes Kanter is 100% right. American-born athletes that have not really seen the world, and when they go there, they're spoiled and they see the positive side of China, not the we're going to indoctrinate you side, not the side where people are where the laws are so girded that people never speak their mind when it comes to the government. They don't see that. They don't recognize that. You can say whatever you want about Donald Trump here in America, and you're not going to get in trouble. And that's a great thing. You can say that. I might disagree with you, and that's my right too.
That comes back to what you were saying about traveling and seeing real world how different political systems and different cultures interact with some of these ideas, and some of them just shut it down.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. They want to maintain the power, which is why whenever you see the government encroaching on your rights, that you have to immediately push back, because that's exactly what they want to do. They want to control the medical system. That's why they're telling doctors you can't say anything negative about COVID. Who benefits from that is the question. It is the pharmaceutical companies that do. Think about the profits that they're making. And you don't get to question the vaccine. And we can say now safely on YouTube, by the way, that they do not work as advertised. Let's just put it like that. You can still transmit the disease to somebody as a vaccinated person. You can still get it frequently from somebody, even when you're vaccinated. And yet they wanted to mandate it. They want to destroy the freedom of the individuals, which is why my channel is called Recharge Freedom, because having traveled the world, I realize how valuable those freedoms are.
That makes a lot of sense. What role do you think pro athletes as a whole should have in shaping social discourse?
They have a pedestal that has been given to them because of their athletic talent, not necessarily because of their brain. If you want to take a look at somebody who has been gifted by God beyond the 10th degree, LeBron James, his athletic talent is off the hook. He runs a 4.5 40, a 6'8", benches 400 something pounds probably, and jumps out of the gym. Blessed by God, and he works hard, to give him credit. He works incredibly hard, because even if you're blessed by that, there are other people that are, but he works tremendously hard. Yet he has a 10-cent mind. He's an idiot. I have no respect for him. He comes out after that cop in, I believe it was Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, or Cincinnati. That is Ohio. Cincinnati, Ohio, yeah. Shot the girl that was about, the black girl, of course, that was about to plunge a dagger into another black girl. And he's like, we're coming for you, or whatever he stated in his tweet. I mean, what's the cop supposed to do? If he lets her stab the other girl as the aggressor, he is a wimp, and he is cast out of the police force for not doing his job. Now he actually does his job and protects the civil citizen, and stupid-ass LeBron James comes out and denigrates him and puts him in the crosshairs of many, many people. This is somebody that I do not respect, along with everything that he's doing with China. They're slaughtering the Uyghurs, whereas Enes Kanter stands up and says, you cannot commit genocide against my Muslim brother. You
Hmm.
respect that because that is a principled stand. And LeBron James, on the other hand, just curls up into a ball and refuses to say anything bad about China because that's where the paycheck's coming from. So look, athletes have a state have a they have a soapbox that they can speak from, and many people will listen. But that is not their forte. So I don't think that in general, athletes, unless they have something wise to say, should be speaking much about politics. Just let the checks roll in and enjoy their lives.
One thing that I've noticed throughout this conversation is, especially when we're talking about the First Amendment, lots of your opinions, even though they're anti woke, don't necessarily mean conservative. And I find that interesting because we're so used to this dichotomy either you're left or you're right. And I'm curious what you think about that.
I think that I'm a pragmatist. I want what works. I used to not be in favor. I used to be not very far left, but I used to be left to center. And everything that
Hmm.
I've seen in the last few years has completely turned that upside down, where today I am actually right of center. I used to not believe in gun rights, but when I saw the cops told to stand down and private citizens have to defend themselves, I suddenly realized how important it is to be able to do so, because you don't want any type of thug coming into your house with your family, and you have two young kids, I know. You have the right to protect yourself from that. And that is what they want to take away. My views switched based on new evidence. And the new evidence for me was the government telling people that you don't have the right to defend yourself. Because of that, I'm a pragmatist. I don't necessarily, imbibe all conservative beliefs. For example, I'm in favor of legalizing drugs because I think that the flip side of it, unless you go Singapore and you just kill every single drug dealer that comes into your country, and I've been there, and it's a little bit scary because you have that thought
Yeah.
in the back of your mind: what if somebody plants something on me? Of course, that didn't happen, but that thought is in the back of your mind. So, you have to be a pragmatist about things. It's not a conservative viewpoint, but I will say that I'm very anti woke because I believe that none of their ideas work. I mean, you take a look, the Germans decided to enact the European Green New Deal and shut down nuclear power plants because Greta Thunberg said, "How dare you?" to them over and over again. She gets nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Meanwhile, Russia uses that shutdown as leverage because now they're able to cut off the natural gas supplies to Germany, and the price in Europe of fuel has skyrocketed, and the Russians are now possibly able to take over the Ukraine. These people are not able to look at even the second level effects of their ideas in terms of the butterfly flaps its wings somewhere in the planet, and you realize the reverberating effects. They aren't even able to go to the immediate effects surrounding them. These people are so stupid. So yeah, for those reasons, I'm very, very anti-woke, but I consider myself a pragmatist. I don't care where the ideas are coming from. Legalizing drugs is not a conservative talking point. You know,
Yeah.
uh, but I'm fully on board now with the Second Amendment, and definitely on the First Amendment, which used to be the area of the left. That was one of the reasons that I was on the left. Now it's the conservatives that are protecting the First Amendment, and the left that are trying to rip it out of the Constitution and light it on fire as they do the Bibles every day in Portland.
So I appreciate you saying that. As long as we have a good idea, it doesn't matter who proposes it.
Absolutely.
Um, and that's something that I really value out of this conversation is that everyone has their own individual opinions. We can subscribe to whatever thoughts and beliefs work for us. You're right, that that's something that we need to value and we need to remember. And to your point, something that we don't realize is very uncommon in all of world history. Yeah, Richard, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts, especially when it comes to sports and the place that athletes have in this discourse and these discussions. Thanks so much for your thoughts, man.
Enes Kanter, I'll listen to him anytime. Thank you so much, Isaiah, for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for checking out that video. I know it was a ride, and it was fun to edit, it was fun to record, and I appreciate the challenge that Richard presents in his arguments and his points. While I may not agree with all of his points, I do agree that it is super important for us to value and cherish our ability to speak and think freely here in this country. So I'll encourage you to like and subscribe. Stay involved with these videos as we talk about the cultural impact and implications of what's going on in sports in our country and in our culture. Catch you all next time.